The addition of Robert Saleh can help the Green Bay Packers more than almost any reasonable trade they could make. Plus, Kendra Middleton, Jaguars fan, Boston sports radio personality, she joins us to get you ready for Packers Jaguars on today's Locked On Packers.
You are Locked On Packers, your daily Green Bay Packers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
You are Locked On Packers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm Peter Bukowski, and I cover the Packers for The Leap, a newsletter I would love for you to subscribe to. Follow me on Twitter, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on Twitter, Locked On Packers. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe to the podcast. iTunes, Spotify, Google Podcasts. Wherever you get podcasts, you will find Locked On Packers. The number one Packers podcast on the internet, and the show for fans who know what happened. They want to know why and how. Thanks to everyone who makes Locked On Packers their first listen every day. We hope you like starting your day with us as much as we like starting our day with you. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play just $5. Robert Saleh, officially part of the Packers coaching staff. He was there at practice yesterday in Green Bay Packers gear. I teased it before our crossover with our friend Tony Wiggins. We have Kendra Middleton, a Jaguars fan and a Boston radio personality. She's great. She's coming up, and she does not hold back. She does not hold back, which is also great. But let's start with Robert Saleh. He is going to be focused primarily on the Packers offense. What defenses are going to do to attack them, the holes in the scheme. And let's just start with the utility of that. A couple years ago, they brought in Aubrey Pleasant from the Detroit Lions staff. And Matt LaFleur said they found that to be quite useful, to have a defensive mind come in and essentially audit your offense. How would we attack it? Where are you vulnerable? What concepts, what protections, what downs, what tendencies? Come in and just look, evaluate the tape like you're a defensive coach, because you're a defensive coach, and tell us what we're missing. Tell us what answers we need to have. And especially with Bob Saleh and all of the teams that are trying to play at least some version of this Jets defense. You know, he in New York had more ability to play man coverage than he did in San Francisco. So he evolved his defense, but he's one of the best defensive minds in the league. This is not, and I joked about this on Twitter, that like I am the kind of person who's going to say cronyism is bad, nepotism is bad, and in most cases, and is one of the biggest reasons NFL teams fail is because they bring in Kyle Shanahan's third cousin once removed, who once saw a YouTube clip that Sean McVay narrated, and now he's your offensive coordinator. Like, that's the stuff that where you just go, come on. Now, that's also how hiring works in a lot of cases, where you're just proximity to greatness must mean by osmosis you've absorbed that greatness. And that's not even really true cronyism or nepotism. True cronyism is Matt LaFleur hiring Joe Barry because they have a pre-existing relationship. If that's exactly how that worked. We don't know exactly how that worked, but I'm just saying if. That's cronyism. Mike Shanahan hiring Kyle Shanahan, that's nepotism. It turns out Kyle Shanahan knows a lot of ball, and you can have good hires with cronyism or nepotism. Robert Saleh did not get hired solely because he's Matt LaFleur's friend. Now, Matt LaFleur was going to hire Mike LaFleur to be the offensive coordinator in Green Bay until Kyle Shanahan blocked it. No one could block Robert Saleh. It turns out Matt LaFleur being friends with one of the best defensive coaches in the league is a boon for the Packers. This is not just some cronyism, hey, come and hang out and we'll pay you. And it's not that. Saleh is legitimately a really good coach. And when you go back at the playoffs, 2019, it's easy to forget in the disaster class that was the Mike Pettin defense of that game. that the 49ers defense, until the game was more or less in hand, stymied the Packers offense. And that in 2021, I understand not Bob Saleh, that was DeMeco Ryans, but a former protege of Robert Saleh found the weak points in that Packers offense. They basically established, if we double Davante Adams, and not just double him, but like let's cloud and let's do all of these different things to make it difficult for you to throw to Davante Adams, we don't think you're going to throw anywhere else. And it was Aaron Jones on swing routes. It was Davante Adams, and that was it. Famously or infamously, Allen Lazard wide open on the play that basically ends it for the Packers, where Rodgers tries to hit Davante Adams deep down the field into coverage. Having someone as qualified, as capable, as pedigreed as Robert Saleh, trying to find the weak points in your offense is incredibly valuable. Go back and look at what Vic Fangio was doing for the Eagles when they're trying to win a Super Bowl. And then eventually, he gets the job and, the defense is not great, but that worked out for Philly. They went to a Super Bowl. They couldn't beat Patrick Mahomes, but that was partially because it's Patrick Mahomes and they didn't have the horses. Robert Saleh is not here to coach the defense, though it is useful to have him in the building anyway, because the Packers are running a version of his defense with Jeff Hafley, and they've made that clear. He's here to vet the offense. But to the specifics of the point that I made to open, that Saleh can help this team more than any veteran, part of that is just because there aren't very many out there. The Packers are not going to swing a trade for a receiver. Cortland Sutton is not going to play over Romeo Doubs or Dontavian Wicks or Christian Watson. You don't want to give up a second-round pick, even if the Rams are going to eat money on Cooper Kupp, to take snaps away from Jaden Reed, who's been one of the 8 or 10 best receivers in the league this year. There's just no reason to do that. And so you look, okay, offensively, there's not really much you can do that's going to move the needle. And then defensively, who's available? I don't buy that Max Crosby is actually available. I buy that team's called. Ditto and more for Myles Garrett. They're just not going to give up on Myles Garrett unless someone comes in and offers them the moon. Like, you'd have to make some stupid offer, some Deshaun Watson level offer, some 3 first-round pick offer. And the Green Bay Packers are just not going to do that. If you look at reasonable options, there just aren't that many that are really going to improve the Packers in a meaningful way. Now, the one exception is I think Jadeveon Clowney is someone who fits the scheme perfectly as a movable chess piece, someone who thrived in the Mike McDonald simulated pressure, exotic blitz world last year in Baltimore. Put him here, put him there, put him mug the A gap, do a little bit of this, do a little bit of that, loop, all these things. He can do that, and he can probably do it better than Preston Smith. And you can probably convince the Panthers to take him for veteran leadership and all that cool stuff. But other than that, I don't really think the Browns are going to make Greg Newsome available. He's a young player at a premium position. I don't think that's going to happen. Denzel Ward is not getting traded. Marshawn Lattimore is not getting traded. So that leaves you with scant few options and a coach who has the potential to shore up a unit that's already really good. But then you just get to say, okay, the blind spots that we might have as offensive coaches, those are now gone because you have one of the best defensive minds in the league here. And there is the fringe benefit. This Jeff Hafley experience has been terrific over the last week or two. He said he's building. They're building. I think Jeff Hafley right now is the kind of coach who just wants to coach ball for a little bit. I think he would take the Ben Johnson route, the Dan Quinn route at the end of the year, maybe even the Steve Spagnuolo route, where teams have some interest and he's like, look, I just want to coach defense right now. And then maybe he's still a young guy. In a year, 2 years, he might get the bug again. Steve Spagnuolo, by the way, still wants to be a head coach. But he's been passed over for all these hot new offensive names. Jeff Hafley might find a similar experience, though, if this defense, which right now is, a top 10, top 12, top 15 unit, depending on where you look, depending on what metrics you like. If they end up in the 6 or 8, if this team goes to the Super Bowl, they go to the NFC Championship game, and the defense keeps playing the way that it has, he's going to get some looks. And now maybe you have someone in-house. I don't think Robert Saleh is in line to get a head coaching position next year. But if he's the defensive coordinator of a team that's capable of competing for a Super Bowl, that's as talented as we see it with Jair Alexander and Edgerrin Cooper, young players, Rashawn Gary, veterans like Kenny Clark and David McKinney, and up-and-coming players like Evan Williams and Javon Bullard and all these guys, why wouldn't you want to be a part of that? This is just a no-brainer for the Packers. Sorry, I went through puberty there for a second. Dealing with a little bit of a cold. But here we are. It's a win-win. It's a win for Robert Saleh. He gets to learn the offense and that side of it. Gets to see Matt LaFleur at work. Gets to see Jordan Love up close. Gets to understand what that's about. And then he can pitch to his next employer the next time he's up for a head coaching job, maybe after he's the defensive coordinator in Green Bay. Hey, look, I learned this stuff. I learned it at the feet of one of the best coaches, offensive minds, best head coaches in football, Matt LaFleur. I've coached for Kyle Shanahan. Mike Shanahan. I've coached under Kyle Shanahan. I had my own experience. I had to deal with Aaron Rodgers. And then I learned from Matt LaFleur, like, what more do you want? The answer is not that much. All right, Kendra Middleton joins us to talk Jaguars, Packers. That's next on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at Prize Picks, the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to everyone. Just pick more or less than at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your money. Run your game all season long with Prize Picks. Yes, I did not misspeak. 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. Take Jordan Love, passing yards, bang, more. You can take Josh Jacobs, rushing yards, less. You got a lineup already. You got a lineup. You can add in a couple more if you want. And Prize Picks is going to pay out where you can get your money out in 15 minutes. Why wouldn't you want to do that? Sign up today and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even have to win to get the bonus. It's guaranteed. So download the app today and use code LOCKEDON to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Today's episode also brought to you by our friends at Zbiotics. Pre-alcohol. Let it be the future if you're going to drink. It is something that I have found in my life is useful because I like to have, a glass of wine or 2 or 3 on a Friday night with my wife, kick back, watch a movie, enjoy it. But I got to take care of my kids in the morning. Both of us do. So that's why you take Zbiotics, the world's first genetically engineered probiotic, invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. I already take a daily probiotic. This is specially engineered to deal with the toxic byproducts in your gut from alcohol. It's that byproduct, not dehydration, that's to blame for your rough day the next day. Pre-alcohol produces an enzyme to break down that byproduct. So just remember to make Zbiotics your first drink of the night. Drink responsibly, and you'll feel your best in the morning. Go to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL to learn more and get 15% off your first order when you use LockedOnNFL at checkout. Zbiotics is backed with a 100% guarantee or your money back if you're unsatisfied for any reason. They'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember to head to zbiotics.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL at checkout for 15% off. Earlier in the week, we had a Bears fan in Jacksonville radio. Now we have a Jaguars fan in Boston radio. None of this makes sense, but Packers-Jaguars in a way kind of doesn't make sense. Kendra Middleton from 98.5, the Sports Hub in Boston, joins me now. Kendra, it is excellent to be with you. I was going to start with how did you become a Jaguars fan, but we were talking before the show, and you're from Florida, so that you come by your Jaguars fandom honestly.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Jacksonville. I was born at Baptist Hospital in 1996. The Jags obviously started in 95, and they put me in a Jaguars onesie straight out the womb. So I feel like there's really no going back after that. As hard as of like 28 years it's been, you can't go back from that. I have that onesie print in my house.
It started pretty good though. Like when you were a baby and you didn't even get to benefit from any of that because you were like not aware of anything going on.
No, 95 and 99 were great years, but my frontal lobe was not developed. I was not cognizant. I have no idea what those teams were like. My earliest Jags real memory, I was probably like 7, and I watched them lose to the Lions at home. And I think that that's when it sunk in forever for me, because I knew that the Lions were bad because everyone talked so much crap about the Lions. I was like, all right, well, if we're losing to this team that we should have beat and everyone thinks is really bad, maybe we are really bad.
Yeah, and for a lot of, well, you had the David Garrard era, like that was a nice little respite, right? And the Trevor Lawrence, this was supposed to be different with Trevor Lawrence. Like that, when that happened, I have to imagine there was a lot of hope among Jaguars fans from like, how did you react to that when you're like, okay, we might, like, Trevor Lawrence is a thing, like he's gonna be great.
So I actually wanted Justin Fields in that draft, believe it or not. So I might still kind of be wrong or right, depending on how you look at it. I know that there's a lot of discourse surrounding Trevor Lawrence, but I'm kind of a Trevor apologist. Like, would I be friends with Trevor Lawrence outside of, football fandom, or would I, support him if he was on any other team? No, I've said it for years that I think that he's actually kind of annoying. But that being said, this whole situation is not his fault. Like, I am absolutely in the camp that Trevor's receivers have led the league in drops almost every single season that he's been in the NFL. And
That's
we
crazy.
saw again, we saw in the Bears game, his receivers dropped 4 touchdowns. His stats right now, QBR, he's better than Patrick Mahomes. Like, he's had less turnovers than Patrick Mahomes this season, and yet the conversation still continues to be, oh, Trevor Lawrence sucks. Oh, Trevor Lawrence is a bust. And that's just not the case. He's been dealt a really bad hand, whether you want to blame Trent Baalke, whether you want to blame Shad Khan for giving him Urban Meyer his rookie year, whether you want to blame Doug Pederson for being a fraud, whether you want to blame Press Taylor for, lining up in shotgun on 3rd and short consistently. Whoever you want to blame, I think as a fan or, just someone who consumes the game, so fair. But I think that box score watchers who think that Trevor Lawrence is a bust are the mouth breathers of NFL fandom. Like, I don't blame you for not watching the Jaguars. I truly don't. But, like, come on.
We got box score watching, mouth breathing. I love it. How early in the Urban Meyer experience did you know this is bad?
30 seconds. I have always hated Urban Meyer. I think he is the biggest piece of crap in the world. I put out a tweet that I remember distinctly. It was like 2020 COVID. I was sitting in my post-college apartment. I had just graduated. I was class of 2020, sitting there seeing the notification come up on my phone and genuinely starting to cry and sending out a tweet being like, Shad Khan, what kind of message does hiring Urban Meyer, no matter how bad you want to win, send to the women of Jacksonville, the players' wives, the players' daughters, the players' girlfriends, the fans' wives, daughters, girlfriends, everything like that, considering everything you saw at Ohio State, everything you saw at Florida. He'd never coached in the NFL prior. Like, what are we doing here? It was an absolutely huge mistake from the jump. I was always anti-Urban Meyer, to the point where I still tweet him at least once a month that I hate his guts. He ruined my life.
He presumably has not responded.
No, but I dare him to block me pretty often, and he won't. And I think that it's just an ongoing bit between him and I, because I tweet him enough for him to see it. I know that he has 1 million followers, but I tweet him enough that he or his PR person has seen it at some point, and they're not blocking me. So
they probably have calculated that if he does block you, then that will be a post too. And that it will become a bigger deal than it was before with you just tweeting at him. So I fully support the bit on both sides. I love it. So then Doug Pederson, Super Bowl winner, like the assumption was from me too, hey, they're going to bring some stability to this organization. I look at the organization and maybe it is Trent Baalke's fault. Maybe it is Shad Khan's fault, but I don't see stability.
No, I definitely think it starts from the top, right? Like, we can point to this across multiple organizations right now. I think we can look at the Jerry Jones situation. We can look at the Jacksonville situation. We can look at all these different franchises. the Patriots right now, I think that starts with Robert Kraft. I think that it absolutely starts at the top, and Shad Khan has not made good decisions about any of the hires that he's made. The number of head coaches that they've gone through since he owned the team is, absolutely absurd. And the fact that I'm sitting here missing other Doug Marrone, my king, my baloney man, that speaks to something.
Syracuse legend, Doug Marrone. Thank you very much. It is a reminder, I think, for some Packer fans who go, well, if they had an owner, they would have made sure that they got this player for Aaron Rodgers, or they'd have brought this free agent in, or they'd have made sure this coaching thing happened. And I just want to point to teams like Jacksonville and go, you want your owner? They screw this up way more than they help. Like, how many owners have been net positives to their organizations on the football side? Like, none.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is that the only thing that I can really allude to, and while I think Jerry Jones has screwed the Cowboys more than he's helped, he's really not bad at drafting. Like, he's put talent on the field.
And they make money.
But his picks are consistently good players. It's just that I don't think that the coaches that he's hired do him any favors. Like, I think Mike McCarthy, shout out Matt McCarthy of the Sports Hub. Hey, King. Mike, one of my coworkers. Mike McCarthy, you're a Packers fan. Did you expect that to go well?
I expected it to go about as well as it's gone. Yeah.
Like, he's won a Super Bowl. I'll give him that, but you're not going to, it's Dallas. Come on.
I think like 12-4 and a divisional round playoff exit is probably that's what you're getting from Mike McCarthy. And if you're Jerry Jones, you're probably mostly fine with that. So if that is the case, from a Jaguars perspective, are you just like, we're doomed unless Shad Khan sells the team? Or is there something that they can do? I see talent on this roster, and it looks to me, at least, like they're underperforming that talent. So how do they fix it?
So I do think that it's definitely an underperformance thing, but if you look historically at the draft picks since Trent Baalke has taken over, they're horrendous. And you probably, the casual football fan has probably never even heard of Laviska Shenault. You know what I mean? They just consistently, time and time again, it's been an issue, and they don't re-sign their own players, which is why it was such a huge deal that they re-signed Trevor Lawrence and Josh Allen this offseason. That was the big thing, is that across any, team that is successful, you draft well and you re-sign your guys. And that's the biggest thing that Jacksonville hasn't been able to do well. So there's so many fingers to point, but I think currently, I don't think Shad's going to sell the team. I really don't, especially because of the new stadium deal. That's not an option. It's off the table. It's not even something I can consider or fathom at this point because it's unrealistic. So I think what has to happen is, I think Trent has to go and I think Doug has to go, but Doug has to go first because him and Trevor Lawrence very clearly do not get along. They do not agree. Press Taylor is not doing them any favors either. And unfortunately, Doug and Press are a two-headed snake. And unless that you can get rid of both of them, because Doug really, really, really does everything he can to save Press's butt in press conferences to the point where he throws Trevor Lawrence under the bus.
I've noticed.
And him and Trevor are fighting on the sidelines with each other. They're, taking jabs at each other in press conferences. You cannot have that happen with your franchise quarterback, especially when you look at Trevor and you know that he is not the type to fight with people. He's not the type to beef with people. If he's beefing with, Doug Pederson, that's a Doug Pederson problem. See you later. See ya, pizza. Get the hell out of here.
Well, and it would be the second quarterback that's happened with, Carson Wentz in Philadelphia. Yep. They had issues too. And not that Carson Wentz, was a world beater by any means. His flaws were exposed, but Trevor Lawrence, we don't even know what he could be. And it seems like there's a chance. You mentioned Press Taylor. What is the deal there? Because it seems like a lot of Jaguars fans that I see would like Doug Pederson to take more control of the offense. And it seems like he's just here, Press, do the thing, even though there's obvious problems there.
So I'm a bit of a conspiracy theorist, and Doug has taken a little bit more responsibility over the last two games since they were in London and had that really ugly loss against the Bears. He's taken more, time to make sure that he's calling some of the plays. I think that Press Taylor has to have some sort of dirt on Doug Pederson in some way, shape, or form. I don't know if it's nude photos. I don't know if they secretly kept in the locker room. I don't know what he has on him, but it has to be something, because I have never seen in my entire 28 years of being a football fan any coach cover for, I don't even want to call it mediocre, because it's not mediocre. It's worse than that. You have so much talent, and just the fact that it is I could call a better game as myself than Press Taylor. And that's a problem. I'm not the type of football fan to scream at my TV. I don't throw things. I'm very calm, so much so that it scares people sometimes. I have found myself screaming swear words at my TV this season because I'm like, what is going on? What is happening? And it's just so frustrating how they've become such a two-headed monster when they don't need to be.
How does Kendra see this game playing out for the Packers and the Jaguars? And could the Packers be the reason Doug Pederson loses his job? Kendra's not so convinced. We'll talk about that next on Locked On Packers. Today's episode brought to you by our friends at FanDuel. You can get big returns right now on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, if you are just starting with FanDuel, because you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place that first $5 bet. You don't even have to win. Packers 3.5-point favorites in Jacksonville. That was 4.5. It has come down. Now, don't freak out, but the reason it has come down, there's a lot of money on the Packers right now. The second most bet game line of the week. Vikings are first. But the models say it should be 3.5, not 4.5. The Packers are clearly the better team, clearly should be favored. 4.5 was just a little bit too much. When you get a hunch in the middle of the game or before the game, you can check out the latest stats, you live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bet. You go in, it's all the scores, all the good stuff right in there for you. You don't even need those other scores apps that you use. Just go to FanDuel because it's all right there for you. Plus, get those bonus bets if you're just starting with FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com to get started. Can you explain to me the London thing, the obsession that the Jaguars have with? I mean, they played back-to-back London games. I know you were there, so this is part of why I want to ask the question, because it seems like they really like doing this. And other than just the cravenness of let's have this other market where fans might like us, I don't get it.
It's actually such a simple answer, and not a lot of people know the answer to it if you're not a Jaguars fan. Shad Khan owns an EPL team.
Well, I did know that. So he just wants to spend more time in the UK?
Because he wants both of those markets to be a moneymaker for him. That's simply it, nothing else. And so it really makes me more mad than anything as a fan. And everyone loves the London games. They're like, it's so great for the league. We're expanding, blah, blah, blah. I'm the exact opposite. I think it is the worst thing for the league for a lot of reasons. But personally, as a Jaguars fan, I hate that season ticket holders are paying the same price to have a home game taken away every year. I hate that it's become 2 games a season, that it's now harder for fans to get to an away game. I hate that it takes money out of local Jacksonville people's pockets who rely on those 8 games a year to work at the stadium. You know, that is money out of their pockets, bartenders, whether you're hourly, whether you work at the stadium, whether you work in hospitality, whatever, that takes a day rate out of Jacksonville's pocket. And on top of that, it takes money out of all the vendors around the stadium, the parking, the Ubers, everything. It takes that money away from the city. And I, as a literally born and raised Jacksonville resident, hate that for my city. On top of all the things that I think that it does for players and everything like that, and their families and their wives and their kids, and how long they're away from them, and the travel and everything that comes involved with it, and how I think that it is terrible unless you randomly win in London like the Jags had done prior to this year. I think that it's just it from top to bottom. I look at the game in Brazil too. You know what I mean? Like, the players traveled all that way to play a game and not even be able to leave their hotel rooms. Like, what are we doing here?
And then the field was a grade 9 disaster.
Put the preseason over there and move on. It should not be the regular season.
I agree. Preseason games abroad is a great idea. They're exhibitions anyway. This is the NBA does it. They go and play games in China. They play games in Africa. They're gonna go do that. Great. Make it a preseason game. The London piece of this, I don't know that it's been covered enough. And look, I have a show and a newsletter and a Twitter account, so I suppose this is partially on me. They were just over there for 2 weeks, and now they're back, and no bye week. And normally the league is trying to give teams post international games a bye week. The Packers had a mini bye coming back from Brazil. Do you think the extra time abroad helps with the readjustment period, or is this like one of those under discussed topics where, like, if they look lethargic, we might be able to point to hey, they were just in London for 2 weeks?
So there are statistics that we see brought up every time that we have one of these games abroad, and it's when you
I
get
figured if
there.
anyone knows them, it's someone who, it's a Jaguars.
Yes. So the sooner that you get there and the sooner your team has more time to adjust, the better the outcome is typically in these away games. Whereas when you come back, the league does give you the option. You don't have to take it. And Doug last year, for the first time in a long time, when he took the first games that Doug ever coached abroad, was the first time in a long time that a coach coaching the Jacksonville Jaguars had declined having a bye coming back.
Mm-hmm.
So it seemed to be okay for them the first go around. I think that it is enough time just because they get out of the way early, they get back on the plane, whatever. I think it's more so if you have kids and that type of thing that it's probably harder for you because it's like, oh my God, dad's been home for 2 weeks and he's home. Your kids probably want to climb all over you. Your wife's like, I need a sitter. I need to get the hell out of this house. I need to go get a manicure and a smoothie and go to Pilates. See ya. So I think it's probably harder for those guys. But if you're single, your routine doesn't really change. You can take a nap whenever you feel like it. I don't think that it matters as much for those guys, but I do think that it is beneficial when taken advantage of, but I don't really have an opinion here or there. It's more so when you get out ahead of time that I think is more important, because coming back to your own bed is easier than leaving it.
Yeah, I mean, the only reason I bring it up is in 2022, the Packers played in London. They came back, did not take the bye week, and I swear did not look like a football team that was not sleepwalking for like 3 whole weeks. It seemed like,
I don't doubt it.
And so I was just like, this is something that I'm going to keep an eye on moving forward, because like this is one of those things where we just don't know. I think we don't have a long enough track record. It's 1 game a year for some of these teams. Like, I don't think we have good data on this. We'll see. It will be an easy excuse, right? If they do come out and look lethargic, that like, oh, they were in London. Like, it'll be an easy talking point. Maybe you're looking at me like I'm crazy.
No, because they've dug themselves so far into a hole that I don't think that there is room for excuses at this point. I think that if they had a winning record, that would be fine. But if the fire is not lit under your butt right now, when is it going to be? And as someone who is just abroad for 2.5 weeks, I haven't adjusted back yet, so I'll say that for sure. So who's to say? I'm not really sure. Like you said, we might not have enough data on it. I'd have to go back and look at teams who have won their first game back without taking a bye. But I do feel like people tend to after they come back from being abroad. Yeah. But to be completely transparent, I've been home for 4 or 5 days now, and I have not adjusted back at all.
Well, okay, we have a data point right here. So the interesting thing for me about the win against the Patriots was there was at least some speculation that they would leave Doug Pederson in London if they did not beat the Patriots. They won, but I'm wondering if the season, if the franchise is in a precarious enough situation that there is a chance that the Packers could end Doug Pederson's tenure on Sunday. Is that possible?
I would love to say yes, but I'm going to go with no. I wish that they would have left him in London even off of the win, but I think that their schedule coming up is just way too hard. The Packers are a great team. The Eagles are a great team. The Vikings are a great team. The Lions are a great team. Texans, great team. They really don't have that opportunity until they get to December with the Titans and the Jets, maybe the Raiders, those type of things. Their end of the season so easy. If they lose some of those games, I could see it happen then, but how do you fire someone for losing to, any of the next 5 of their games? I think that that's going to be the excuse from the front office and from ownership is, well, it's the Packers. Well, it's the Eagles. Well, it's the Vikings. Well, it's the Lions. I think that kind of in itself is an excuse. And Shad, I think, is going to be really embarrassed when that happens, just because he's been so wrong so many times about head coaches and decisions about the front office that I think that he will delay the embarrassment as long as possible for personal reasons. But that's just my feeling watching Shad Khan operate for the last 8 to 10 years as an owner.
All right, it's time to finish up with predictions, suggestions, however you want to finish off here. Like, what do you think is the most likely outcome here on Sunday?
So the Packers have averaged 27 points a game. The Jaguars have averaged 20 points a game. The Jaguars have averaged letting up 27 points a game, and the Packers have averaged letting up 20 points a game. I'm going to say 27-20 Packers.
We love symmetry. Kendra, this was so much fun. Thank you so much. Where can people hear you, see your work, all that good stuff?
If you have a phone, you can download the 98.5 The Sports Hub app if you really care about Boston sports radio. If not, you can follow me at Kendra Middleton on Instagram. I put out all kinds of content, not just sports content over there. And if you would like to follow my tweets, I'm pretty unhinged constantly. So if you don't like the F word, don't follow me on Twitter, but it's at Kendra with an I Middleton.
All right, thanks to Kendra for joining the show. Great to talk with her. I told you she was not going to hold back, and she didn't hold back. Don't be a mouth breather box score watcher. Oh, loved that. Loved that. All right, Friday. This is what we do. We get you ready to have some fun. They're not all going to be like we had. I feel like there's the Ollie Connolly version of the Friday show, which was last week. This is the Kendra Middleton version of the show. I like having both. I like this show to contain myriads. So, just like all of us, we all contain just some multitudes. We contain multitudes. That's the saying, not myriads. Goodness gracious. Sunday. What day is it? Sunday. We will be live after the game. Packers, Jaguars. Hopefully the Packers get a win, a comfortable win, and we don't have to worry that much about it. Follow me on the social medias, Peter_Bukowski. Follow the podcast on the social medias, Locked On Packers. Subscribe on YouTube and wherever you get podcasts so you can stay Locked On Packers.